Confidence Man: The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America by Maggie Haberman. The story begins not in the gilded halls of Trump Tower or the polished corridors of the White House, but rather in the bustling outer boroughs of New York City, specifically Queens, where a young Donald Trump learned the art of the deal, not on Wall Street, but from his father, Fred Trump, a real estate developer who had mastered the game of navigating the city's intricate political landscape. The elder Trump, a man of German descent, was the son of accidental American residents. Friedrich Trump, the patriarch of the Trump family, found his way to America in pursuit of opportunity, leaving behind the mandatory military service that awaited young men in Germany. In America, he worked as a barber before moving west during the gold rush, where he opened businesses catering to prospectors. While it's unclear whether his establishments directly involved brothels, Gwenda Blair, a biographer, suggests he tolerated and possibly encouraged prostitution on his properties. Friedrich eventually became an American citizen, married Elizabeth Christ, and started a family in New York. However, Elizabeth longed to return to Germany, leading to a brief return in 1904, cut short by Friedrich's expulsion due to his avoidance of military service. The family, including a young Fred Trump, settled back in New York, where tragedy struck with Friedrich's untimely death during the 1918 flu pandemic. Fred Trump, now a teenager, took up the mantle of the family business alongside his mother, Elizabeth. They faced the Great Depression head-on, with Fred even running a supermarket in Queens to make ends meet. During this time, Fred Trump immersed himself in the world of New York real estate, a realm teeming with opportunities and fraught with challenges. He learned the ropes of the trade, building houses across Brooklyn and making inroads with the local Democratic machine, a powerful entity that controlled much of the borough's politics and patronage. This connection would prove invaluable, helping him secure a lucrative venture in the mortgage business, a key component of his growing empire. Fred Trump's business acumen was undeniable. He was a builder, a deal maker, and a master of navigating the complex political landscape of New York City. But he was also a man who understood the power of connections. He cultivated relationships with influential figures, from local politicians to powerful lawyers, ensuring that he always had someone in his corner. These relationships were not built on friendship or shared values, but on transactions, favors, and a mutual understanding of the game being played. This was the world that Donald Trump inherited, a world where deals were made in backrooms, where loyalty was a commodity, and where the lines between business and politics were often blurred. As Fred Trump's business grew, so did his family. He married Mary Ann McLeod, a Scottish immigrant, and together they had 5 children. Donald, the 4th child, was born in 1946 and grew up in a household that was, by all accounts, far from warm and nurturing. Fred Trump was a demanding father, often pitting his children against each other and expecting perfection. He was particularly hard on his 2 older sons, Fred Jr. and Donald, fostering a rivalry that would have a lasting impact on both of them. Fred Jr., the eldest son, was initially groomed to take over the family business, but he lacked his father's drive and ambition, and his struggles with alcoholism led him down a different path. He became a pilot, a career choice that deeply disappointed his father. Donald, on the other hand, seemed to thrive under his father's couture regime. He was a natural competitor, always striving to win, even if it meant bending the rules or stepping on others along the way. Young Donald was a force to be reckoned with, even as a child. He was known for his aggressive temper and bullying tendencies. One neighbor recalled an incident where a young Donald pelted rocks at a baby in a playpen, only to be dragged home by the collar by the baby's furious mother. In school, Donald was no different. He was impulsive, disruptive, and often in trouble. His classmates at the Kew Forest School remembered him as a troublemaker, prone to outbursts, and always seeking attention. One particularly telling incident occurred when Donald was in 7th grade. He and his friend, Peter Brandt, had developed a fascination with pocket knives, sneaking them into school and trading them among themselves. When Fred Trump discovered Donald's collection, he was furious. Without explanation, he sent his 13-year-old son away to the New York Military Academy, a strict boarding school some 70 miles north of the city. The military academy was a harsh environment with a rigid hierarchy and a culture of discipline that bordered on abuse. Donald, accustomed to the comforts of his privileged upbringing, was suddenly thrust into a world where he had to fend for himself. He learned to navigate the social dynamics of the academy, forming alliances and rivalries, and developing a reputation as a tough, ambitious, and somewhat aloof young man. Despite the challenges, Donald thrived at the academy. He rose through the ranks, becoming a captain in his senior year, a position of authority that he wielded with a mixture of pride and detachment. He was popular with some, feared by others, and respected by most, but he was also in many ways an enigma. He was a young man who seemed to crave attention and validation, yet he often kept people at a distance, revealing little of himself. After graduating from the military academy, Donald enrolled at Fordham University in the Bronx. It was not his first choice. He had not considered a career in film, a dream that his father dismissed as frivolous, but it was a stepping stone to his ultimate destination, the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Wharton was where Donald would hone his business skills, develop his network, and begin to forge the identity that would define him for decades to come. It was also where he would encounter his first significant challenges, both academically and personally. He struggled with some of his classes, and he clashed with professors and classmates alike. But he also began to develop a reputation as a shrewd negotiator, a skill that he would later parlay into a successful career in real estate. While Donald was navigating the world of academia, his father was facing a new set of challenges in his business. Fred Trump had long relied on government subsidies and tax breaks to finance his projects, but in the mid-1960s, he found himself under scrutiny from state and federal investigators. He was accused of inflating costs and misusing funds, allegations that threatened to derail his empire. This was a world away from the glamour of Hollywood that Donald had once dreamed of, but it was the world he had been born into and the one he was determined to conquer. In the midst of these challenges, Donald made a decision that would forever alter the course of his life. He decided to forgo a career in film and join the family business. It was a decision that was driven in part by his desire to please his father, but also by his own ambition and his growing understanding of the power and influence that came with wealth and real estate in New York City. He saw an opportunity to build on his father's legacy, to create something bigger and grander, something that would bear his own name. And so, as the 1960s drew to a close, Donald Trump embarked on a new chapter in his life, one that would take him from the outer boroughs of New York City to the pinnacle of power and influence in Manhattan. It was a journey that would be marked by ambition, controversy, and a relentless pursuit of success, no matter the cost. As Donald joined the family firm, he began to dream bigger than his father ever had. He envisioned skyscrapers that would pierce the Manhattan skyline, casinos that would glitter on the Atlantic City boardwalk, and a personal brand that would become synonymous with wealth and success. He was determined to make his mark on the world, to become a household name, a brand, a force to be reckoned with. He immersed himself in the family business, learning the intricacies of real estate development, construction, and finance. But he also cultivated an image, a persona, that was larger than life. He became a fixture in the city's social scene, frequenting nightclubs and restaurants, always surrounded by beautiful women and influential people. He courted the media, using his charm and brashness to generate headlines and build his brand. In the early 1970s, Trump became involved with a lawyer named Roy Cohn. Cohn was a controversial figure, a man with a dark past and a reputation for ruthlessness. He had risen to prominence as a prosecutor during the McCarthy era, playing a key role in the infamous Red Scare and the persecution of suspected communists. After leaving government service, Cohn became a powerful lawyer in New York City, representing a wide range of clients, from mob bosses to celebrities. He was a master manipulator, a fixer, a man who knew how to get things done, no matter the cost. Cohn saw something in Trump, a kindred spirit perhaps, and he took the young developer under his wing, He taught Trump the art of the deal, the power of intimidation, and the importance of always projecting strength, even when you were vulnerable. He also introduced Trump to a world of power and influence that had previously been out of his reach. Through Cohn, Trump gained access to a network of politicians, business leaders, and media figures. He learned how to use the press to his advantage, how to shape public opinion, and how to navigate the treacherous waters of New York City politics. Cohn also taught Trump how to deal with his enemies, real or perceived. He encouraged Trump to always fight back, to never back down, and to use every tool at his disposal to win. It was a lesson that Trump took to heart, and one that would define his approach to business, politics, and life. With Cohn's guidance, Trump embarked on his first major project in Manhattan, the transformation of the aging Commodore Hotel into the luxurious Grand Hyatt. It was a bold move, one that required Trump to navigate a complex web of city regulations, financing deals, and construction challenges. But Trump, with Cohn's help, was able to secure the necessary approvals and funding, and the project was a success. The Grand Hyatt became a symbol of Trump's ambition and his ability to get things done. It was also a turning point in his career, marking his arrival as a major player in the Manhattan real estate market. As Trump's star rose, he continued to cultivate his public image. He became a regular fixture in the gossip columns, always eager to talk about his latest deals, his lavish lifestyle, and his beautiful girlfriends. He was a master of self-promotion, always finding a way to keep his name in the headlines. But behind the scenes, Trump was also learning the darker side of the business. He saw firsthand how deals were made, how favors were traded, and how power was wielded. He learned that in the world of New York real estate, nothing was ever as it seemed, and that the line between success and failure was often razor thin. In the mid-1980s, Trump embarked on his most ambitious project yet, Trump Tower. He envisioned a gleaming skyscraper that would be the tallest building in the world, a monument to his own success and a symbol of New York's resurgence. But the project was fraught with challenges, from community opposition to financing difficulties. Trump, however, was undeterred. He used every tool at his disposal, from legal maneuvering to public relations campaigns, to push the project forward. He even resorted to intimidation tactics, threatening to sue anyone who stood in his way. In the end, Trump Tower was built, although it fell short of being the world's tallest building. It was a triumph, but it also came at a cost. Trump had made enemies along the way, and he had further cemented his reputation as a ruthless, unyielding businessman who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. As Trump's business empire grew, so did his political ambitions. He began to flirt with the idea of running for office, even commissioning a poll in the late 1980s to gauge his chances. He saw himself as a potential leader, someone who could bring his business acumen and his no-nonsense approach to the world of politics. But he also saw politics as a means to an end, a way to enhance his brand and expand his influence. He was not driven by ideology or a desire to serve the public good, but by a hunger for power and recognition. In the 1990s, Trump faced his greatest challenge yet. The real estate market crashed, and his highly leveraged empire was on the brink of collapse. He was forced to sell off assets, renegotiate loans, and declare bankruptcy multiple times. It was a humbling experience, one that threatened to destroy everything he had built. But Trump refused to give up. He fought back, using his negotiating skills and his public persona to stay afloat. He even managed to turn his financial struggles into a public relations coup, portraying himself as a victim of the system, a fighter who had been unfairly targeted by his enemies. By the early 2000s, Trump had emerged from the wreckage of the 1990s, his empire bruised but not broken. He had learned valuable lessons about the fragility of success and the importance of resilience. He had also learned that he could use his celebrity status to his advantage, that he could manipulate the media and shape public opinion in ways that few others could. And he had discovered a new platform for his ambitions: reality television. The Apprentice, which premiered in 2004, was a runaway success. It catapulted Trump to a new level of fame, transforming him from a New York real estate developer into a national icon. The show was built around Trump's persona as a tough, no-nonsense businessman, a boss who was not afraid to fire people and who always got the best deals. It was a carefully crafted image, one that bore little resemblance to the reality of Trump's business practices, but it resonated with millions of Americans. The Apprentice gave Trump a new lease on life. It also gave him a new platform for his political ambitions. He began to use the show to test the waters, to float ideas, and to gauge public reaction. He saw that he could use his celebrity status to command attention, to set the agenda, and to shape the national conversation. And he realized that he could tap into a deep well of anger and resentment among American voters, a sense that the system was rigged against them and that they needed a strong leader to fight for them. As Trump's political ambitions grew, he began to surround himself with a new set of advisors, people who shared his worldview and his willingness to break the rules. He found common cause with political operatives like Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, who saw in Trump a vehicle for their own ambitions. They helped him craft a political message that was based on fear, division, and a rejection of the establishment. They also helped him develop a campaign strategy that was unlike anything that had been seen before, one that relied on social media, free publicity, and a constant stream of outrageous statements to keep the media and the public off balance. In 2015, Trump finally made his move. He announced his candidacy for president, launching a campaign that would upend American politics and shatter the norms of political discourse. He ran as an outsider, a disruptor, someone who was not beholden to special interests or the political establishment. He promised to make America great again, a slogan that tapped into a deep sense of nostalgia and a longing for a simpler, more prosperous time. But his campaign was also marked by a dark undercurrent of racism, xenophobia, and misogyny. He attacked his opponents with a ferocity that was unprecedented in modern American politics, using insults, lies, and innuendo to smear their reputations and undermine their credibility. Despite the controversy surrounding his campaign, Trump managed to win the Republican nomination, defeating a crowded field of experienced politicians. He then faced off against Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee, in a general election that was one of the most divisive and acrimonious in American history. Trump's campaign was marked by a series of scandals, from the release of the Access Hollywood tape, in which he bragged about sexually assaulting women, to allegations of Russian interference in the election. But he persevered, tapping into a deep well of anger and resentment among voters who felt left behind by the political establishment. On Election Day, Trump shocked the world by defeating Clinton, winning the Electoral College despite losing the popular vote. It was a stunning upset, one that few had predicted, and it was a victory that would have profound consequences for the country and the world. As president, Trump continued to govern in the same way he had campaigned, with a mix of bombast, bravado, and a complete disregard for the truth. He attacked his critics, undermined democratic institutions, and pursued policies that were often at odds with the advice of his own experts. He withdrew the United States from international agreements, imposed tariffs on allies and adversaries alike, and launched a trade war with China. He also appointed a series of judges and justices who would reshape the federal judiciary for decades to come. Trump's presidency was marked by constant chaos and controversy. He fired his FBI director, his attorney general, and a number of other top officials. He was impeached twice by the House of Representatives, but acquitted both times by the Senate. He faced a special counsel investigation into his campaign's ties to Russia, which found evidence of Russian interference in the election, but did not establish a criminal conspiracy. And he oversaw a government response to the COVID-19 pandemic that was widely criticized as inadequate and ineffective. Despite the turmoil of his presidency, Trump remained popular with his base. He held rallies across the country, drawing large crowds of supporters who cheered his every word. He continued to use Twitter as his primary means of communication, often firing off a series of tweets in the early morning hours. And he continued to attack his critics, using his bully pulpit to demean and belittle anyone who dared to challenge him. As the 2020 election approached, Trump faced a new set of challenges. The economy was in recession, the country was deeply divided, and the pandemic was still raging. But he remained confident that he would win, convinced that his supporters would turn out in droves to re-elect him. He campaigned tirelessly, holding rallies in swing states across the country, often flouting public health guidelines in the process. He also continued to attack his opponent, Joe Biden, portraying him as weak, ineffective, and out of touch with the American people. On Election Day, millions of Americans went to the polls to cast their ballots. The results were close, but in the end, Biden emerged victorious, winning both the popular vote and the Electoral College. Trump, however, refused to concede. He claimed, without evidence, that the election had been stolen from him, that there had been widespread voter fraud, and that he was the true winner. He launched a series of legal challenges, all of which were ultimately unsuccessful, and he encouraged his supporters to protest the results, culminating in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. In the end, Trump left office as he had entered it, a divisive, controversial figure who had changed the course of American history. He had shattered norms, upended institutions, and challenged the very foundations of American democracy. He had also inspired a movement, a passionate base of supporters who believed in him and his vision for the country. Whether his legacy would be one of triumph or tragedy, only time would tell. But one thing was certain: Donald Trump had left an indelible mark on the nation, and his impact would be felt for generations to come. Trump's presidency was a culmination of a lifetime spent pushing boundaries, testing limits, and defying expectations. He had learned early on that rules were meant to be broken, that power was to be wielded, and that the truth was whatever he said it was. He had built an empire on a foundation of ambition, audacity, and a willingness to do whatever it took to win. And he had brought that same approach to the White House, transforming the presidency into a platform for his own personal and political gain. As Trump left office, the country was deeply divided, its institutions weakened, and its democracy under assault. The pandemic was still raging, the economy was struggling, and the nation's standing in the world had been diminished. But Trump himself remained unbowed, convinced that he had been wronged and determined to fight on. He had lost the election, but he had not lost his supporters, and he had not lost his ambition. In the months and years that followed, Trump continued to exert a powerful influence over American politics. He remained the de facto leader of the Republican Party, and his endorsement was sought after by candidates across the country. He also continued to spread lies about the 2020 election, fueling a movement that sought to overturn the results and undermine faith in American democracy. And he hinted at the possibility of another run for president in 2024, a prospect that filled his supporters with hope and his critics with dread. As the nation grappled with the legacy of Trump's presidency, one thing was clear: he had changed the country in profound ways. He had exposed deep divisions in American society, and he had exploited those divisions for his own gain. He had also shown that the norms and institutions that had long governed American politics were more fragile than many had believed. And he had demonstrated that a candidate with no prior experience in government, no respect for the truth, and no regard for the rule of law could win the highest office in the land. The story of Donald Trump is a uniquely American one, a tale of ambition, power, and the pursuit of fame at any cost. It is a story that is still being written, and its ending is far from certain. But one thing is clear: Donald Trump has left an indelible mark on the nation, and his impact will be felt for generations to come. Whether that impact will be ultimately positive or negative remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the story of Donald Trump is far from over. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.